So my name is Stephanie Bray, and I am the co-chair of the Healthy Sacramento Coalition. I'm also president and CEO of United Way California Capital Region, and I'm really excited to be here with you all this morning. Welcome to the Sierra Health Foundation. This morning, we're going to talk about a really important report that's come out, and we're really excited about. But first, let me give you a little bit of background on who the Healthy Sacramento Coalition is. We are community groups and neighborhood activists who've joined forces to examine the social determinants of health and to remediate and close the gaps that separate our friends and neighbors from opportunity along racial ethnic lines. We are jointly committed to see Sacramento become an all-in region, and you'll hear a little bit more about what that means. It's one defined by fair and just inclusion, so that all Sacramentans, whatever their race, nationality, religion, or ethnic group, can participate, prosper, and reach their potential for a healthy life. These values drive our methodology, which is to measure the performance of adopted policies and change or abandon those that separate talented people from opportunity. In this way, we can achieve a society where everyone can contribute and share their abilities to the health and benefit of all. We're here today to announce the release of an equity profile for the Sacramento region. The profile shows that we have a long way to go to achieve equity, and I know that that's something that's very important to Mayor Steinberg and to Supervisor Serna. Our 126-page report was prepared with our partner PolicyLink, and James Crowder is here, and you'll hear more from him in a few minutes. But it details the many ways in which current city, county, and regional policies conspire against these values. Just as the report identifies the many ways in which people are separated from opportunity along racial and ethnic lines, we make the case that failing to close those gaps acts as a very real anchor on economic growth in our region. Indeed, we demonstrate that expanding opportunities to those who've been marginalized could add $19 billion to the regional economy if we address those disparities. Consequently, the coalition will collectively seek local policies that will close these gaps, specifically looking at land use and housing policy that integrates opportunity, jobs, income, and assets to achieve economic security for all, education and job readiness for a prosperous region, Americans in waiting, an immigration system that welcomes and works, building healthy neighborhoods for a healthy region, releasing locked up potential, fixing the badly broken criminal justice system, and then democratic participation and leadership reflecting our region's rich diversity. So whether one is motivated by the moral imperative of achieving equity or the economic prosperity that these policies offer, we ask you to join us and contribute to this effort to seek policy change that will improve the lives of all people in our region. So the report, it's 126 pages of data and analysis, and it's available online, so all of you can download it and read it. But by way of summary, I'll tell you what this study says, what story it tells. It's the story of a young girl who lives in a community where there are good schools, transportation, access to jobs, clean air, healthcare. This young girl thrives, and her future is launched on a rocket of hope. But there's a second young girl whose family works in jobs that barely pay the rent. The schools are failing. Toxic soil and air fill her neighborhood. There's no public transportation to connect family with services during the day when her parents are working. The family's voices are silenced. Hope is a commodity in short supply. The talents of these young girls are equal. The opportunity is not. It's the purpose of our report to show how both young women can thrive and contribute to their potential. And so with that, I'm going to stop, and I'd like to invite Chet Hewitt up, who is President and CEO of Sierra Health Foundation, to give us some remarks. Thank you.
And let me just say, we're going to have a slight change in the program because of some schedule conflicts, and we're going to hear next from the Mayor of Sacramento, Darrell Steinberg.
Thank you so much, Chet, for your indulgence with my schedule. And Supervisor Serna, I know we both have several engagements this morning, but I would not miss this for the world. And I want to thank the United Way. I want to thank the Sierra Health Foundation. I want to thank PolicyLink. I want to thank PERC, and I want to thank all of you for essentially producing a roadmap for Sacramento's economic future, because that's what you've done here. And so we collectively as Sacramentans are all excited about the excitement around Sacramento. Whether it's Lady Bird, Black Panther, the Golden One Center, the arts and culture renaissance, the potential to grow this city in ways that create the cosmopolitan city that I think most Sacramentans want to see. And of course, not just the city, and it's the region. But that excitement will in the end be hollow if it is not connected to, not just connected to, but led by an inclusive economic agenda. I put it this way. As we create the jobs of the 21st century here in Sacramento, the real question is, will our kids from our neighborhoods, especially our lower income neighborhoods, be educated and trained and be first in line for those jobs? Will we have a set of progressive housing policies so that people, working people, and lower income people, and people with disabilities, and yes, people who have had the hardest of hard times and find themselves on the streets, will we have housing for everyone? And so it's not enough to talk about the economic renaissance in Sacramento in very general terms, because we will be measured by, and I know I will be measured by, I will measure myself by, whether or not we are actually creating opportunity for people who have too often been left out and left aside. And this agenda is the city's agenda, and it's the region's agenda. When you talk about career pathways, we think about in our city the beginnings, and it's only the beginnings of Thousand Strong to try to create those pathways for young people. Every high school student ought to have a year-round paid work experience that is integrated into their academic program so that they get work experience, the opportunity to go to college, and a career pathway whether they choose to go to college directly or not. And of course, housing is a crisis in this community. It's most represented by this unacceptable homeless problem. And I'll be darned if we're going to live in a city, in a region where we aren't doing everything to try to make this better. But it's about more than homelessness. It's about working people. It's about preventing homelessness. It's about the thousands of people living on the edge who are one workplace injury or lost job or too high of a rent increase away from becoming homeless. We can have it all in this city. We can grow. We can have all the great things, all the cool stuff, the developed riverfront, all the things that we want. But that's not enough. It's not enough unless it's connected with opportunity for people who live in our communities and our neighborhoods. And that's the clarion call from the Health Equity Now report. And I'm going to keep this on my desk, if not in my pocket, everywhere I go, to remind me every day about what our job is. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor. That's why we love you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And now I'd like to invite Supervisor Serna up to make a few remarks.
Yeah, I love starting my day by having to follow the mayor. In all seriousness, I'm really honored just to be here and share a podium for a few minutes with my good friend and our mayor, Darrell Steinberg, who, as you can tell, is an extremely passionate mayor on all the right issues. And it really is very fortunate for me personally, knowing Darrell as long as I have and knowing what's important to him and his agenda, but also to our broader region, certainly the entirety of the County Board of Supervisors as a partner with the City of Sacramento to try and tackle some very, very challenging subject matter, including homelessness. I just want to start today by, reflect on the fact that, every 4 years we run for re-election, assuming we want to continue the post. And it gives you a really unique opportunity, not just to engage in what you would expect during the course of a campaign, but it gives elected people an opportunity to look back at your platform and what commitments you made the last time you ran and whether or not you fulfilled any of that. I got to tell you, this room has really spawned some terrific work for our community. I too want to thank the Healthy Sacramento Coalition, PolicyLink, Sierra Health Foundation, and of course our dear friend Chet Hewitt for his leadership on so many important initiatives here. But this room, every time I'm here, we're talking about really good work. And it's work that oftentimes is influencing what we do as policymakers. But as a candidate, looking back on my record, I'm really proud of two things, super proud. And it's not just about me, it's not just about what I did, it's what we did. We tackled the subject and continue to do so of the disparity in death rates in the African American childhood population. And we tackled the subject of reestablishing healthcare services for people regardless of their immigration status. And it's initiatives like that that are so important, and they should be commonplace. They should be more commonplace than they are. The real value, the real utility of what I see in your work today and what I see in the report is that you have the choir here. With the mayor and I. We want to do everything we can to advance the work that you're doing, to flank you when we can, politically and from a policy perspective. But quite frankly, not everyone shares it as a high priority as we do. And so I see the utility of this work really influencing and shaping the values and the mindsets of other local leaders in our region, so that it's not a novelty that we're tackling the fact that African American kids die at 2 and 3 times the rate that they should. That should be commonplace, that we're prioritizing those initiatives the right way. So again, I want to thank everyone in this room, a lot of dear friends in here that I see on a daily basis doing great work in our community. I want to thank you for everything you do, that you continue to do. I will be at your beck and call and at your service any way I can. I give you that commitment, and I look forward to the next steps that come out of today's great work. Thank you. Thank you.
So again, I want to thank the mayor and Supervisor Serna for taking the time to be with us today, and we look forward to continuing the dialogue with you both. And so now I'd like to invite Chet back up. We'll give a few remarks.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. one of the things that we know about, our work is that we're always nimble and flexible in whatever we have to do. And I think it was really important to hear from our elected officials and to hear them discuss, the importance of what's been produced and their commitment to carrying it forward. And of course, we taped all that. So in the event that folks need to be reminded of commitments they've made and things they said, we will pull that video out along with the report, let them know what's been done. And I say that somewhat in jest because I know that the two folks who spoke before me really are two champions of equity. And they may not come at it with that particular language, which comes out of our work in communities and as health institutions, but they hold that idea and ideal in their hearts as much as anyone else in this particular room. I think we're very fortunate in our community to have two tremendous champions who hold political office as well. Now, my job here was to explain a little bit about the Healthy Sacramento Coalition. It's 42 members and the work that they've been doing over the past 7 years. Because the Healthy Sacramento Coalition was started actually in 2011. It was the result of one of the first community transformation grants that came out of the then new Affordable Care Act. Now, the community transformation grants were in some ways path-setting because they were about prevention in health, around improving health and well-being in communities beyond simply expanding access to health insurance. And we know that health insurance is really important, that we shouldn't even have it as a debate in our community or in our society in this country. But we also know that health insurance or health care is about 15% of one's health. That 85% of your health is really determined by the places you live, work, and play, the ability to feel a level of self-efficacy, which is your ability to deal with the shocks and traumas that life sends to us all, and the kind of support systems that you are wrapped in order to overcome whatever challenges life may send at you. So healthcare is essential when you're ill, and where you are and where you work and where you live and where you play is essential, not so much to the treatment of illness, but to the production of health, the production of wellness, well-being. And that was the roots in which the Healthy Sacramento Coalition was begun. Interesting enough, a year and a half into this, path-setting initiative, it was actually changed, right? The federal government decided that communities organizing themselves to talk about a policy direction that promoted health and well-being was not something that they should tolerate. And I'm not overstating this because there were actually articles in newspapers about communities engaged in policy making, talking about access to sugar beverages in their communities and not enough access to healthy foods and vegetables. And so the community transformation grants were actually changed. Most communities lost those grants, right? And they became programs that were directed at health departments for more standard fear interventions. Not bad stuff, not at all. Not the kind of stuff that was actually going to lead us to a new place. And that was unfortunate. But I tell this story because I think that what's really remarkable about the Healthy Sacramento Coalition is that even without the resources and funding, folks decided to stay the course. And so for 7 years now, despite the shocks that go along with that, hopeful and then rocky start, folks have actually managed to stay the course and continue this work, going forward. And while there's a lot of applause that has been given to the foundation and to others, I really just want to give a round of applause to the members, the membership of the Healthy Sacramento Coalition, who have done tremendous work with support from PolicyLink and others over that 7-year period as well. So could we just really acknowledge, their commitment? I just want to kind of close by saying make 2 points. First, we talk about health equity, which is really the absence of disparities in health that are either remediable or controllable, regardless of your social, demographic, or economic status, or where you happen to live, all right? There are certain things that we can't control, but there are many, many things that we actually can. So this notion of equity and this notion of health equity is not some amorphous concept. These are things that by policy choices, either we will improve, that is, see them go down, or you will see them exacerbated by going up, which is a real possibility in this work as well. So I don't want folks to think that this is somehow some language that comes out of the world of philanthropy or academia and isn't rooted in things that we know well. We know this well, right? When we respond to violence in our communities, right? When we see homeless camped out in front of our public facilities, right? When we see the graduation rates for Black and Latino males in high school in an economy that's increasingly one that's built on knowledge. So these things are not, far-fetched, amorphous concepts. They are real and present in our lives in very, very powerful ways. And if we want to be not a good city, if we want to be a great city, and if we want to be a great region, then we're going to have to do the hard work, a little bit of looking in the mirror, making some tough choices about what we're willing to fight to change, to make the prospects of a better life, a more inclusive life, right? A more self-actualized life for communities that we don't pay enough attention to now, real. That's what this report is about. The things that we struggle with are malleable and changeable. The big question is, are we up for the challenge in front of us? So with that, I'll hand it back to my colleague.
So before I invite James Crowder up from PolicyLink, I want to recognize the members of our Healthy Sacramento Coalition Steering Committee. Would you all just kind of stand and so we can recognize you? I'm grateful to them for being on this journey, and many of them have been on it far longer than I have. And so I've learned quite a bit in the time that I've been co-chair with Veronica Beatty. And we know that we have a lot more work to do. And so once you hear from James, I hope that you'll be thinking about how you can engage with us to take on what we believe, like Chet says, these things are changeable. We can change policy. We can make it more equitable for everyone in this region, regardless of race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender. It doesn't matter. We need to be a region that is all in. And so with that, I want to introduce James Crowder. He's a senior associate from PolicyLink, and he's going to give you an overview of the report.
And it is a good morning. I must say I'm impressed by the passion that I'm seeing from this podium right now. Again, my name is James Crowder. I'm a senior associate at PolicyLink. PolicyLink is a national research and advocacy organization based in Oakland, California, but with offices in New York, and DC, and Los Angeles. And our focus is on racial equity and economic inclusion across a number of different areas: infrastructure, transportation, housing. This particular engagement with Sacramento and the Healthy Sacramento Coalition is through the generous support of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, who wanted to take a deeper look at the intersection of health and equity in 5 cities across the country: Sacramento, Fresno, Cincinnati, Long Island, and Buffalo. And the report, the profile that Stephanie and Chet mentioned is, again, 126 pages, including a detailed methodology for those academics that love to interrogate how we got here. But we also are releasing a policy brief called Health Equity Now, toward an all in Sacramento. And that takes some of the data from the 126-page equity profile and adds to it some local flavor, right? Because data is just that, it's just numbers. But it can't really tell you the stories behind the numbers. And so we also interviewed a number of stakeholders across Sacramento, about 20 stakeholders, including Supervisor Serna, Councilman Chenier, I think I'm saying his name right, as well as a number of different community-based advocates. We also did 2 focus groups. We did one in Del Paso Heights, where we talked to residents about their experience and what they're seeing occurring across the city, as well as one through Sacramento Act, which was a lot of new Americans and immigrants to the community. And all those perspectives and the data informed the policy brief, which can serve as a roadmap as the Healthy Sacramento Coalition takes its next steps. I think this engagement is particularly unique given the role of California in the U.S. economy and the role that Sacramento plays within California. There's a lot of power here. Stephanie already mentioned the $19 billion, what we call equity dividend. And I'd like to start off with that number. It's a powerful number to get the conversation started when you think about what's kind of being left on the table because of inequity. And we arrived at that number by looking at the age-adjusted income distribution of non-Hispanic whites, and what would the economy look like if all people of color had that same distribution. So essentially, that's our proxy for eliminating barriers and challenges. And it's $19 billion. That's something powerful to think about for folks across the aisle when they say, why should I, invest in this program, or why does transportation matter? Because when folks can't get to jobs of opportunity, or when they have to move even further away to be able to afford to live in Sacramento, this is the cost that we're contributing to. Sacramento, across my research, is one of the most diverse cities in the country, and that demographic change is continuing. And the data in the profile that you'll see, it's a lot of 2014 data, which is we're 2018 now. But as of that time, Sacramento Region was 51% white. Now, across the country, by 2044, the country is going to be majority people of color country. Sacramento is going to be there much quicker. So when we think about the need to invest in people of color, when we think about the need to invest in our low-income communities and ensuring that they have access to opportunity, like Chet mentioned, there's a sense of urgency there in getting there sooner than later. My hope is that Sacramento can serve as a case study, given kind of the very vocal support of the Sierra Health Foundation and the mayor and the supervisor. I'm hoping that other cities can look to Sacramento to learn from it. That's what PolicyLink, our tagline is, lifting up what works. We work with cities and other geographies to identify what those challenges are, and through data and seeing what works in other cities for those challenges, linking folks to those policies. And PolicyLink is happy to support HSC along the way. I'm not going to go into too much detail now because I'm going to speak ad nauseum in about 10 minutes. But I think, I'll close this portion with this. I think Supervisor Serna said it well when he said this is the choir, right? I think folks in this room already get the moral imperative of equity, right? And what is the just and fair society that we strive to be. But there's also the economic imperative that I want to underscore too. It's not something that we can ignore anymore. It's imperative that we remove those barriers to opportunity and have an all-in Sacramento. And so I'll stop there for now until I give my longer presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, James. I want to acknowledge Karen Abrego from Senator Pan's office is here with us. Thank you so much for being here. And I want to invite up a young man who is going to tell you exactly what we know in this report, how it's impacting his life day to day. His name is Ural Strickland. Come on up, Ural.
Good morning. I'm from Sacramento, California. I grew up kind of like in the South Sacramento area, so that's like Meadowview and Valley High over there. Still to this day, I face a lot of different housing issues. Like my mom, she's homeless now. She got kicked out of her house in like 2013 because she couldn't pay the rent. Even now, my dad, he struggles to pay the rent that he has, and he's on Section 8. So we both work. We both work a job. He works 2, I work 1. We both work. We struggle, but we maintain. Try to at least keep the bills paid. But sometimes, in order to keep the bills paid, we sacrifice having food in our house. So not every day is a glorious meal, or every day is a home cooked meal. Sometimes we eat top ramen and sandwiches. I mean that's just not the only two people that I have seen experience homelessness or housing issues. I know I have a friend right now. She's 21. She applied for Section 8 like when she was 16, and they said she's still on the waiting list. My sister's like 25 or 26. She got a good job. She works at a bank, but every time she applies for she still applies for houses and stuff, but it takes a long time for them to get back to her. And then, so she's still experiencing certain housing issues. And even my grandma, she's been staying in her house in Valley High for probably over 4 or 5 years. She just got a letter, not even a letter. The manager, she went to a hospital. She went to a hospital for some health issues. And I guess the manager had some people come look at her house while she was in the hospital. And they told her when she came home from the hospital that she got to move by the end of this month. So by today, she got to be gone. I mean, it was a struggle finding her a different apartment. I was literally riding my bike, walking to different apartments, trying to help her find places. But, by the grace of God, she found another apartment to move into. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Ural, thank you for sharing your story. I know it took a lot to get you to say those things, because they're hard things. And so we really appreciate that you're sharing those stories with us. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Thank you. And so what I heard from that, and I hope all of you heard as well, is that it's generational too. That these disparities, that inequity follows from generation to generation. And it's a really difficult cycle to break unless there are policies in place to address what underlies all of those challenges. Whether it's making sure that there's equitable access to affordable housing, making sure that there's equitable access to health care, to transportation, to workforce development, job training, education. All of those things are inextricably linked. And so, with that, I hope you'll take away that we really do have to do something